On the staff of Army Group Center on the Eastern Front near Borisov, there are officers whose determination to change course has been growing since 1941. "40-year-old Colonel Henning Von Tresckow comes from a Prussian military family. He enlisted at 16 and was a lieutenant in the First World War. He was a member of an elite unit, the 9th Potsdam Infantry Regiment, and he's highly respected by his fellow officers.
He was that kind of person. The minute he came into a room, he became the center of attention. Not because of what he said or because he was elegantly dressed or anything like that, but because of his manner, his clarity of expression, his analytical mind when he assessed a situation and gave his opinion. It was a pleasure, linguistically and in its content. A well-rounded personality, highly educated and highly intelligent. He was really very fascinating.
Behind closed doors, Tresckow speaks frankly to his fellow officers. From the initial vague ideas about removing Hitler, a sophisticated plan emerges. Heinz Drossel also joined the 9th Potsdam Infantry Regiment in 1939, and he's later stationed in Russia. Like Tresckow, he's a devout Christian. One day, he wanders off from his unit during a break and walks into the countryside.
I came to a forest and looked down into a valley that was encircled by hills. And I saw a mass grave, perhaps 3 or 4 meters wide and 60 or 70 meters in length. The grave was filled with corpses, all dressed in clothing that was typical of Jewish people. More of them were kneeling, and behind them were soldiers in German uniforms with pistols or submachine guns in their hands. Directly below me, a little boy was standing. I would estimate him to be about 6 years old. He kept reaching for the person kneeling to his right, and the soldier, standing behind him, kept hitting his arm down rather brutally.
Der Soldat hinter ihm schlug ihm immer den Arm ziemlich brutal herunter.
When the boy reached to the right again, the man took his gun, shot the child in the back of the head, and kicked him into the grave.
Gab dem Kind einen Genickschuss und stieß ihn mit dem Fuß in das Grab hinein.
It was a turning point. The Nazi regime had forfeited any claim to his allegiance. Heinz Drossel doesn't see Russians and Ukrainians as the enemy, but as warm-hearted people, an experience shared by many other German soldiers. Not long after, Heinz Drossel is escorting a captured Red Army commissar to the rear. According to the commissar order, he will be shot in violation of international law.
When we got to a place where we couldn't be seen from anywhere, and a path went off into the forest to the left, I said to him, "Naljevo, left, go left," and he did. Was he, I thought about this a lot later, was he thinking, now's the moment when you're going to be killed? But I called to him, "Don't be afraid, I'm not a murderer, I'm a human being."
Tiny acts of resistance, carelessness, misunderstanding orders, or ignoring them. And for a handful of officers on the Eastern Front, resistance means full-scale conspiracy, with all its consequences. Henning von Tresckow's circle is soon discussing just one topic. How can Adolf Hitler be deposed or removed? But as long as the Wehrmacht is still winning victories, most remain loyal followers, against their better judgment. Why are so few prepared to take a stand? The files of the British Secret Service in London. Until recently, these files, discovered by historian Sönke Neitzel, were top secret. They're transcripts of private conversations between German generals and staff officers held prisoner by the British. The secretly recorded conversations make it clear why so few of the generals were prepared to oppose Hitler.
They say it themselves. We have Hitler to thank for our success. He gave us our jobs, and we can't turn against him now. It was certainly significant that these people received no promotions during the time of the Reichswehr during the Weimar Republic, and their careers only took off when Hitler came to power. They start getting promoted in the mid-30s, and then they make general. They join the ranks of the generals, and that impresses them, and they're grateful, and that makes them loyal.
The Nazi state has purchased their loyalty. Trent Park, near London. All the German generals captured in the West are held here. The building is luxuriously appointed, and every centimetre is monitored by hidden microphones. A rear admiral and a colonel can speak freely here. They're high-ranking officers, but they don't see themselves as responsible for anything.
That's what I mean. That's just what the senior Wehrmacht officers failed to say with one voice. We refuse to take part in these atrocities. They are a disgrace to the name of Germany.
The few that didn't fare too well.
But if they had all just done so at the right time, for historians it will be one of the great puzzles of world history, the fact that something like this was actually possible.
This is a historic guilt of the German generals that together they didn't prevent these atrocities, which began with the war. Bock, Manstein, Leib, Rundstedt, they share the most guilt because surely only the upper echelons were in a position to defy the Supreme Commander.
That should have happened in 1933, 1934 when it all began.
When it all began, most of the officers had no inkling of the coming disaster. On the contrary, on Potsdam Day, the 9th Infantry Regiment paraded for Hitler and his henchmen. They hoped that Hitler, the strong man, would give the army more money and more influence. Even Henning Von Tresckow at first welcomed Hitler's takeover. Many senior officers like him were carried away with enthusiasm for a new beginning. Only later do they realize that Hitler is capable of anything. The prisoners in Trent Park speak quite openly about this. The British Secret Service transcribe every single conversation. It's a colossal task, for in their enforced idleness, the prisoners talk all the time. Not knowing they're being recorded, they admit to their initial enthusiasm for Hitler.
How healthy National Socialism was in the beginning. We worked like pack horses for the Nazis.
A pity. Those boys had to commit such atrocities.
At the beginning I always used to say, oh, it won't be that bad. You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. I used to think they were just minor flaws.
The oath to the Führer was another flaw. Since 1934, soldiers of the Wehrmacht had to pledge their allegiance direct to Hitler. It was both subservient and unconstitutional. Yet the Wehrmacht's leaders had suggested it themselves. The oath had far-reaching consequences. It made it difficult for most soldiers